in advance, but we have some panelists coming on and they will be not nervous and not as silly as I'm going to be. So I'm going to kick it off if that's okay with everyone. And first and foremost, I'm going to do some introductions to the CMC staff. Hopefully you've seen some of these faces before, and if not, you will shortly. So we're sort of divided into coaching team and employer relations team. And you'll see up top, Emily, myself, Sandy, and Kathleen are coaches. We divide and conquer by function industry. And then below are the employer relations team, Heather, Emma, and Noah. And a special call out, myself and Emma really work with the consulting strategy folks. I help on the coaching side, and Emma is the interface with our employers and alum who come and interact with you all and hopefully pull you into their business. So she's really integral to the whole workings, the back end workings of this CMC and employer relations stuff. Okay, agenda. So I'm going to go over sort of a brief overview of what consulting is, the recruiting timeline, which is also generalized as well because there are exceptions to things, the student time commitment as it pertains to consulting recruiting in particular. We have a student panel, Emmy is part of that. And then at the end, I'll go over resources and next steps because you all perhaps have some free time this summer. And if you do, it's a great time to utilize free time to look at resources and get onboarded a bit before you start in Mod 1, because you'll find out, if you haven't heard already, Mod 1 and Mod 2, it's a lot. And so the more you can front load things, the better. So we have some resources that are online that you can access before you get here. So a brief overview, and again, this is very generalized, but I really just want to give an idea of what consulting is. Simply put, it's problem solving. I'd say even more generally, it's strategic thinking. So the traits of a consultant and key themes that you will find in job postings are strategic and creative thinking. They thrive in ambiguity. You're adaptable and flexible. Things change very quickly, and you want someone who can sort of think on their feet. They're a leader who's collaborative and a clear communicator. I want to highlight communication here. I think a big part of the behavioral interviews and also the case interviews for consulting surrounds leadership and communication. For example, in a case, a big part of what we hope to teach you all is not only to solve for the problem, but to communicate clearly how you're thinking about a problem and how you're moving towards a solution. So in addition, you're comfortable with data and analytics. When you're coming to a problem or looking at a problem and coming to a solution, how are you utilizing data and formulating that idea to move forward? A lot of firms are looking for at least 3 years of experience, really up to 10, but that 3 to 5 years, 3 to 7 is a really big sweet spot for MBAs in particular. And consulting firms traditionally have looked at the GMAT as their main metrics. And I'd say post-COVID, it's really varied. So they're looking any metrics that they can look at, they would appreciate, but you can think about GPA, GMAT, or even scholarships that could differentiate your candidacy from others. So something to think about and something that you can mark within your resume. Okay, so this slide is from our self-reported data, and it shows over the last 5 years, the trends of where our students are landing. You'll see consulting is up top, 22%, but I want to also sort of give some context around this. So when firms and organizations come to campus, they could be coming as a generalist saying, I want consulting, or I want an internal strategist. And on the front end, that looks very much like you're being hired in consulting, which you are. However, consulting is an industry and a function. So on the back end, once you are staffed at a firm, for example, you could be staffed within the healthcare business or the healthcare realm, or marketing or product. And so the reports, our data just looks a little bit different because it is both an industry and a function. So I just when you're looking at our data, I want you to keep that in mind. I tried to break it out into finance or tech, real estate. We have all of that within consulting, but this number was a clear indication of where our folks land rather than breaking it into function or industry, because it just gets a little murky when it's a self-reporting situation. So an example of this, EY comes and posts for 3 different verticals. They post for finance, healthcare, and supply chain. However, we have other firms. Deloitte, for example, has moved to a generalist model. So everything is under strategy. However, you're interviewing and sort of lining up with human capital or healthcare or supply chain within Deloitte. And so things can look a little bit different on the back end when you're reporting. Confusing, but I just want to sort of couch that and try to explain what that looks like. And I want to go over the timeline. So I mentioned that this is a general timeline because it all depends. For better, for worse, things keep picking up faster and faster. You're having access to employers and alums much earlier than perhaps even 5 years ago. However, there is still the traditional timeline of using the fall to prep, case prep, and network, and then applying in late fall, November, December, with interviews in January and February. However, you'll see here that there are some national career fairs, some opportunities, which those include opportunities for early interviews. An example of this is the veterans have a conference in October. And last year, we had quite a number of folks attend that and leave with, if not job offers, early access to interviews, which resulted in offers prior to the new year. So you'll also, this summer, there are opportunities. Forte is a huge leadership conference for our female candidates. And there's some opportunity to interview there or network into their pipeline early this summer. And that pulls you out of the traditional timeline. However, there's plenty of traditional timeline opportunities. You're going to get to campus in August. If you have the opportunity to do a resume prior to getting here, do some career exploration prior to getting here, all the better for you. I think Mod 1 hits hard and fast. So the more you can front load this, the better. And then in September, the on-campus recruiting process will begin. That can include info sessions, coffee chats. You'll have access to a lot of employers starting in September, and that goes for a couple of months. And then you'll see the case prep for consulting in particular picks up in September. The Owning Strategy and Consulting Club will meet and greet you early when you get here. So August, you'll see them, you'll have an opportunity to interact with those folks, jump on board, and then get involved in that case prep, which goes throughout the fall. So that's a whole process in and of itself, but just know that it is lingering there. You have all of the opportunity to get trained up on that through the club and through the CMC as well. So as I talk about what this process looks like, I wanted to give a snapshot of what a student's life could look like in the fall. So I did a typical healthcare and consulting student. So this person, this past year, is concentrating in strategy and healthcare and recruited for consulting specifically, but then did healthcare consulting as well. So he attended 20 information sessions. Those were both virtual and in person, but organized through the CMC. He did 7 CMC sponsored workshops. So that's something like today, or a behavioral workshop or a resume workshop. He went to 6 career exploration events. I'd categorize these more as like lunch and learns or something that a club has put on to help you really look at what is this career? What could this look like? He did 40 case interview prep sessions. So that you're going to have the opportunity through case prep to do one-on-one practices with your peers and your second years. And again, it's a heavy lift in the fall, but we set you up to be able to do that. And so he did 40 of those, and he did 11 coaching appointments. So we had a lot of time together, which you can do resume reviews, mock behaviorals, talk about networking, talk about his specific applications, all of those fun things. So recruiting activities can be the company presentations, coffee chats, interview instruction and practicing, networking, which is a huge part of consulting as it is a customer-facing business, skill development workshops like the case interview prep, and company industry and research. So if I think about this holistically and what the fall looked like, it was ranging from 10 to 20 hours a week. I sort of think of it as another class that you put on in the fall, especially, and then it can continue into January and February when you have those interviews. You might have stacked interview days where it's a lot of time, all worth it, but it's a lot of time. So I think Sam just joined, which is like perfect timing. So we have 2 of the 4 pictured here joining us today, but I wanted to keep all 3 of the L&D folks on here so you can see some faces that will probably be very familiar to you as you get to campus in August. So I'll let them introduce themselves, but first, when I say L&D, leadership and development are a team within our consulting leadership club, and they really head you towards the case prep stuff. They take charge of that and are offering 6 or 7, I think, Sunday night sessions, and then we'll set you up with one-on-one casing opportunities as well. So you will be very familiar with the faces in a while, but Emmy, can I kick it to you first? And then Sam, could you do an intro?
Hey everyone, I'm Emmy. I'm from Nashville, actually, so stayed here for Vanderbilt, but I will be heading to Atlanta in the springtime. So I have a slightly later start date so I could take advantage of some opportunities before I start my full-time work. I was a tax accountant prior to business school. Easy to explain why I didn't want to do that anymore, and really liked the more strategic creative thinking that came with consulting. I entered school thinking I did not want to do consulting at all, but then went to all of those wonderful events Courtney outlined and was thoroughly convinced that it would be great. So I interned at Bain last summer. I loved it. Can't wait to go back. And I just graduated a month ago. So life is good when I don't have any responsibilities yet.
And it's her birthday. So thank you, Emmy, for joining us today. Sam?
Happy birthday, Emmy. My name is Sam Ederle. I'm from the Boston area originally, and I'm interning up at LEK Consulting in Boston this summer. I just started training this week, so I'm on site right now at this really cool resort. We're doing this whole training thing in Chatham and Cape Cod. Not dissimilar to Emmy, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and then I kind of discovered consulting through these sessions with Courtney and with the rest of the CMC. I got really excited about it, and I was coming from a career as a professional actor, so if you think that the leap is too far from whatever you're doing to consulting, I promise it's not. When you show up, you really, exactly like Courtney said, you really get ingrained into the whole system of casing and learning what consulting is all about and understanding what the different firms are and what opportunities there are for you. We'll have a whole thing planned for you with Stephen and Jeff. They're absolutely outstanding. Hopefully we'll all be able to cover different parts of what you're trying to learn, but I'm sure I'll get to know a lot of you a lot better come this fall. But this summer is a great time to kind of explore different types of career paths and understand what you want to do.
Thank you all. So I will get to, I've referenced a lot of stuff that you can do over the summer, and Sam, we have Sam for a tight 20 minutes. So I wanted to get him on the panel first, and I'll go over the resources afterwards. So
cool.
While we have him, I'd love y'all to, either of you or both of you, to talk about what your falls look like. If you can think back to this time, gearing up to starting in August, and when things started for you, what the timing looked like for you, and all that jazz.
Emmy, you want to go ahead?
I can start some chronological order. I'm old now. So right about this time, I guess 2 years ago, I was just joining every single call from the CMC I possibly could to get a handle on the things I can do to prepare, what the different paths are, just anything I could to take in new information, since the farthest I had gotten in my planning was not accounting, so wasn't great. And then as I got onto campus, I pretty much signed up for any information session I had remote interest in, and just really committed to making sure those times worked in my calendar. Pretty early, some of the firms started having meet the firms events. So I would say during Mod 1, I was meeting a lot of people. And then most of the Fridays in Mod 1, there is a symposium for the different recruiting tracks where you can learn a lot about the different companies and what different roles look like. So I made it a priority to go to those. And the consulting one, I feel like changed my life because I met Caitlin, who works at Bain, and she and I hit it off, and now I'm going there. So the symposia really took up a lot of time in Mod 1. And then towards the end of Mod 1 is when those Sunday night sessions started kicking up. And Mod 2 is when I started doing case prep. I had a couple of friends with recurring weekly calendar invites, and that was great because I knew 3 of in my week were just going to happen. We were committed. I knew that they were good case partners. And then otherwise I did try to mix it up with different second years each week and different first years each week, so that I wasn't getting used to the same style again and again. I, in fact, practiced more with people who I knew were going to be stony faced and like not give me a whole lot in return. I know I'm a very enthusiastic, smiley person, and I needed to prepare for the reality that that might not be the case in interviews. So that was pretty much the fall. And I would say I did probably about 5 cases a week. I ended on the lower end with about 30 cases. I could have done a few more, but it all worked out. So yeah.
I'll reiterate a lot of what Emmy said. I think, when you show up, Emmy was a part of the consulting club leadership when I showed up. So she was kind of helping lead us through, but there's a real order of operations kind of on how things run this fall. So you show up, I think our first week, Deloitte was on campus doing an info session. So a bunch of us went to that. And then there's an info session with the consulting club. And then you just kind of get into this thing where, Sunday nights you're going to case prep. And then, maybe Tuesday night, some companies coming to campus and you all are going to their info session. And Mod 1 kind of ran like that. You're doing case prep, you're going to info sessions, you're starting to understand who the firms are. And maybe you're starting to talk to a few practitioners with coffee chats, but mostly I was doing coffee chats with second years. So a lot of Mod 1 is just meeting with second years. You're trying to get time on their calendar. A ton of us, we know that's a part of the process. So you try to do lunch with a second year, meet with them in the morning for coffee, and just get a feel for what their internship looked like and what their firm was like. In terms of Mod 2, things then kind of ramped up a lot more. And I think that's normal for a lot of first years. You start doing a lot of casing. You start casing with second years, which can be sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. I was probably similar to Emmy. I probably ended around 30 cases or so, but we had people that succeeded, some people going to Bain, like Mac, who did 50 cases. And we had some people that did 40 or 30 or 20. It varies. It's really about figuring out what works for you. I will say, I put a big emphasis on making sure I was focusing my classes Mod 1 and a little bit Mod 2, but definitely Mod 1 because our GPA is potentially available to our employers. You can either put it on if you feel good about it or maybe keep it off, but they may or may not know what that means when you keep it off. So I definitely focused on school, info sessions, and Sunday sessions, and everything else kind of moved to Mod 2 in terms of applying and meeting a lot of practitioners. Not to mention some of our classes, especially for someone like me, taught me things that I needed to know to even go talk to somebody about business, to understand some of the consulting terms and stuff. So those initial classes, although they can be, very typical business classes, finance, statistics, all those things, I thought they were very valuable.
Y'all brought up a lot of good points. The one thing or a few things I want to say, mention the consulting track.
Mm-hmm.
And then also talk about those metrics. Sam, you're coming from a non-traditional background, for example, if there's not a GMAT or not an undergrad GPA or whatever, being mindful that that could be a metric that you could gain in Mod 1 is really smart.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the networking is a huge part of consulting, but if you're not ready to do that Mod 1, prepare in other ways to then jump on it in Mod 2. Just as you were sort of mentioning, Sam, you concentrated on Sunday night sessions, second year conversations, and classes Mod 1.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. That it works out because then you give yourself Mod 2 to sort of lean into the next phase of things. So did either of you all go? Emmy, you might not have had it your year because of COVID. Sam, did you go on the consulting track?
I did, yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it was over fall break. I think just about not every single person, but most of the people that were focusing on consulting and people that were focusing on other career paths, investment banking or something, went on whatever their trek was during fall break. We drive ourselves down there?
I know, I'm like, I don't know. Yes.
Yeah.
What I remember is we went to Atlanta. We all stayed in this hotel, and basically it was 2 or 3 days. And we went to visit Deloitte. We went to PwC. We went to Bain and BCG, and it was really cool. It was not dissimilar from some of the info sessions that we do at school in terms of them running through who they are, what they do. It was usually the alumni of Owen that were kind of presenting to us on the kind of work they do. But then you also got the chance to see the office, which is a whole different part of it. I just got to see the LEK office for my internship, and it does give you a better feel for kind of what the work might look like. You can see who's in there, how they kind of, seat themselves at different desks and stuff. I thought the trek was very helpful. And then maybe just as important for it was, Emmy mentioned this, and I meant to say it, kind of forming your pod of people and, who you rely on, because it's a busy time. The fall of getting your MBA, your first year, is a very busy time, but it's a lot easier to be busy if you're doing it with other people. It's a lot harder if you're by yourself. So a big part of fall break was actually that Jeff, I think, drove me down to fall break to the consulting track. And then we got to know each other and started to case together and work on stuff. So it's a really great bonding experience with the other people that are doing consulting, as well as, seeing some offices.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I know that makes me so happy.
But forming that pod was huge.
Yeah.
At least for me, it's big to have a support system as you're doing a lot of casing in night times.
I agree. I mean, did you participate in that at all?
We didn't have a trek our fall break.
I didn't
took
think so.
class. I
Yeah.
don't recommend the class.
Yeah. It was a different time. So
wait, one more thing. Sorry.
Oh, no, please go.
You guys also hosted a happy hour where some people from other firms that are alumni in Atlanta got to come, and we got to kind of talk with them and make some connections. So it wasn't just the firms that we visited.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to mention is networking. So networking is a huge part of consulting recruiting. And it's also a big part of once you're in the firm, it's part of your daily life there. And they also just want to see how you interact on a one-to-one basis, how you converse with folks. It's a client-facing role. So could you, either of you, both of you, speak to what networking looked like, even defining what it is, and how the time commitment looked like, what it resulted in for you, sort of that stuff.
Yeah, I can give a quick overview of what mine was like, since it was still a little COVID-y. I'm sure mine looked a little different from Sam's. Most of mine was like virtual coffee chats or talking on the phone. I mean, most of the second years would meet in person. So I didn't start meeting with second years probably until a few weeks into school, after I had a few info sessions with OSCC, or the consulting club, to know that this is the right time. They're expecting it. I'm not being over eager by reaching out yet. I really didn't know anything about consulting or what the recruiting timeline looked like. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on toes. So a few weeks into Mod 1, I started reaching out to second years to get 15, 20 minutes of their time. And sometimes we did grab lunch or have coffee, as the coffee chat would imply. And sometimes we literally just sat in the lobby while I asked a few questions about their internships and their recruiting cycles. And that was most of it through Mod 1. There were a few events where I could meet people from firms in Mod 1, largely virtual. And then Mod 2 is when we started getting more of the invite only type things and having the second years introduce us to practitioners at the firms. And so I would say in Mod 1, I probably had 3 or 4 coffee chats a week. People went way harder than I did, I will say that. So I was pretty chill on the time commitment I put there, just because I was filling a little in over my head with school. And side note, if you don't get a 4.0 in Mod 1, you will still get an internship. You'll be fine. And then Mod 2 is when I felt like I was emailing practitioners and having them set up time to talk. And I probably had, 3 to 4 of those a week where I was touching base with a practitioner, had some kind of event where I was talking with somebody at a firm, whether that was like the one-on-one type coffee chat or like a group event online. Some of the firms will have like case prep workshops, and some will have what is now dinners, but was like virtual dinner then. So that's kind of what networking looked like. I don't feel like I was all of a sudden like every single day talking to people though. Still a lot more case prep time than anything else.
Yeah, I'm gonna be copying a lot of what Emmy said again, but I felt like the best way to network was really to succeed within the walls of Owen, and then to trust that that will kind of filter out into mostly alumni at different firms. So I focused on talking with second years and getting to know them, being like just reliable and on time and succeeding at case prep. And since I was doing consulting, getting involved with Courtney, who was in the CMC, and Emmy, and the whole consulting leadership, as well as other people that had done consulting that were second years. In terms of like interview invites, which is one metric, I found that a lot of my interview invites came from really great one-on-one connections that I'd made with people at the firms. In part, it was getting introduced to somebody and having a great conversation, and then them saying, why don't I introduce you to somebody else? And then also just the position we were in. I mean, I was available 24/7. If somebody was, there was a guy at Bain that I was talking to that was on paternity leave, and he's like, I'm going to be driving to Nashville with my wife and kids. Can you talk? And I was like, great, Thursday morning, let's do it. So I was just open to anybody's conversations. But the reason I say all that in terms of interview invites is with LEK, I did almost no networking. It wasn't a big networking firm. There was a guy, Devin Coe, who kind of leads their MBA. If you have any questions, you can kind of talk to him. I talked to him once, and then that ended up being my internship. So it can really vary firm to firm. But yeah, a lot of what Emmy said, I think the networking definitely started with second years. And Courtney tried to tell us this, and I think it got through to most of us. But if I had tried to reach out to some, relatively important alumni at some firm the first week or two of school, I don't think I knew at all enough about consulting to even know what I was talking about. And their time is pretty valuable, and they do a lot to help us recruit. So we'll probably give a rough timeline of how that networking can all kind of go. But definitely the first few weeks, I would just recommend second years, get time on Courtney's calendar. It's elusive, but you can find it, and just kind of get to know the people within the walls, and then it'll filter out from there.
I did want to add one thing on networking. Whatever you need to do to like bring your best self to any coffee chat, whether that is with a second year or with a practitioner, do it. For me, it's normally having a cup of coffee. Like, I'm not going to lie, if I'm tired, I might need an extra jolt to feel like I'm my normal chatty self. Make sure you have questions written down if you feel like you will get nervous. Like, that has never once bothered me. If a student said, hey, do you mind if I take some notes or look at my notes of things I wanted to make sure I asked you? It's much better to show up seeming prepared and like really interested in the conversation than like you're just gonna try and, excuse my language, but shoot the shit for 15 minutes. It shows a respect for their time. It helps your time be more valuable. But yeah, whatever you can do to show up present and feel like you're ready to get something out of the conversation, I recommend doing that.
I would agree. It becomes overwhelming, but also it can feel robotic. And the more you can make a genuine connection with people and make them think this wasn't a robotic thing, the better on you, because your time is valuable, their time is very valuable. So how can we make this like a genuine thing? Because it is part of the process. So let's make it our own and make it worthwhile. So, okay, Sam, I know you have to go soon. So my question for you is around Sunday night sessions, the elusive like term we keep using.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to give some detail on what the heck that means. What is a case interview if people haven't become familiar yet? And what do you all offer as the program for the fall? Perfect.
This will be a good rough run, and then I'll have a perfect answer when we have week one of school and we give you an official consulting overview. Sunday sessions are essentially our way of giving you a structured way to learn how to do case prep. casing is the way that consulting interviews potential candidates to join their firm. And compared to, a lot of interviews you might be familiar with, where they ask about your experience and where you're coming from, and they maybe dig into your resume a lot. Some of these firms may do that for some portion, but the main part is going to be giving you a hypothetical business problem and kind of watching you solve it / solving it along, with you. And I always kind of think of it as a conversation. So one person once said to me, it's like a friend came to you and asked you to join, meet at a coffee shop, and they have this business and they want you to help them kind of run through something they're trying to solve. And that's how I treated every case prep session and every case. So it could be, we've got this company that makes lawnmowers, and they're operating in the southeast of the United States, and they're trying to expand into a different region, and we want to analyze all these different regions. That would be like a prompt. And then you go through this series of steps that we will teach you over months of time to kind of break down the problem into parts and solve it slowly through analysis, through quantitative and qualitative type of insights. It all sounds crazy, and it sounded crazy to me at first, but it really starts to make sense. And the cool thing about it, from a lot of people I've talked to, is it really translates to the job, because the consultant's job, as Courtney kind of said at the beginning, is problem solving. It's breaking down problems. It's making companies, it's taking their most complex problems and breaking it down into easy one-by-one steps. So the Sunday sessions, I'm starting to think if I actually answered Courtney's initial question.
You did. No, I'm like, yes. Yes.
These sessions will be broken into different parts, where we'll kind of run you through like what a case is. I think we're thinking like 4 sessions of just kind of like, here's what a case is, piece by piece. And then we'll do some sessions on the back end that are more of like a deep dive into like, okay, we talked about that part earlier. Here's how to really break that down. Stephen and Jeff are the minds of the operation. They'll be very valuable when we get in there on Sundays. But the 3 of us are really looking forward to it. I mean, we appreciate immensely the people that did it before us, Caleb, Kyle, and Alyssa, and we're looking forward to doing that with you guys. And then we'll be available to you throughout, especially the first 2 mods. We'll host office hours. You'll have our phone numbers. You'll have our emails. You can just ask us questions and really kind of hopefully get you guys prepared for interview season, which comes in early January.
Thank you. I will say also, we will have, just like you've probably heard about peer coaches, we're going to have some case coaches on deck to work hand in hand with L&D. So you will have just under 20 folks that you can match up with, especially in Mod 2, to do one-on-one casing with. And I wanted to shout out for Sam in particular. Yes, it can be overwhelming, especially if you're coming from a non-traditional background, or a unique background, I should say. However, the communication aspect of casing is really important and sometimes hard to teach. So there's a huge data set. There's a huge qualitative and quantitative portion of this whole thing. But treating it as a conversation, utilizing your communication skills, being as quote unquote normal as possible is not something to take for granted, and something that you did in spades, Sam. So I think networking also went well because of that. So just something, it can be an intimidating proposition that you're going to learn this whole new style, but you are bringing things to the process already that you need to remind yourself of. So just
I talked to a lot of people that talked about, one part of our job is solving the problem. The next part is communicating the problem and telling the story, kind of from beginning to end. So that was somewhere that I felt very comfortable with. I'll also be a comms fellow, so I'll be drilling home just everything there is to know about presentation and trying to smile and be comfortable and make eye contact. So I'm looking forward to it.
There you go.
Emmy recruited me for all of these positions. She just dragged me in.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, Sam, hop off. Thank you for taking time out of your day.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Good luck. I'll see you all in the fall.
Emmy, before I go to next slides, which is resources, stuff that y'all can get onto now, I wanted to talk to you about, in your experience, what casing looked like. So you're also a very good communicator, but there were technicals that you taught yourself and learned. Can you just, for you, how was casing? What was casing? How was it involved in your interview process? Just as Sam talked about.
Yes, I think the biggest thing with my casing was the frameworks portion. that's what I really needed to focus on. And then the brainstorming, I was a tax count as mentioned. So math was never the issue. I could get through the math just fine. I felt very confident in that. So I made sure that I wasn't spending as much time as some of my peers in rocket blocks and things like that, which were great for my friends who didn't love mental math as much. But I made sure that, you know, when I was heading into a case, I was explaining to the second year that I was casing with, or even the other first year I was casing with, hey, I feel like my brainstorming has been weak. So can you please be ready to give me very specific feedback on that and talk through it? And so they went in with the mindset of knowing like, okay, I really got to know if she hit the points on the answer key, or if she was way off base, or if she was even organized at all. So I think there was a level of self-awareness that I could feel like I wasn't as comfortable with those sections, and then asking for the specific feedback. And then what also helped was scheduling. I mean, I told you about my recurring case partners, so they could tell me if I'd improved week over week. But with some second years, I would say, okay, I've cased with you this week. Here are the things we said I need to work on. In 2 weeks, I'm going to case with you again. Let's hope it's better that time. And then I would remind them at the start of that session, because I don't expect them to remember everything. Like, hey, remember last time we did this brainstorm? It went okay. Here was your feedback point, and I've been working on it. So can you keep that in mind this time? So I think that's what really helped, was just knowing I need to ask for those specific pieces if I want them. It is kind of like a long word problem that you're doing together. So there's no way you're going to get that detailed feedback without specifically telling people that's what you're after. So I think that was the best thing that I did.
Yeah. And the further along you get in the casing process, the more you can say pointedly to who you're casing with, I know this is the problem, or I know this is what I concentrate on, which is awesome. So you will get to that point, especially as you all have interviews on deck. You can do casing according to how LEK cases or how Bain cases. That's further down the line. But just as Emmy's saying, she learned the things that she needed to know and could answer accordingly for practices. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to go over, we keep talking about resources, and you all do have tons of them. And some of them you can even access over the summer. This is a big overview of everything you have from the CMC and from Owen. It all is housed within this one platform of 1220, which is our career CMC platform. And from there, you can sign up for coaching appointments. You can sign up for info sessions. You can even sign up for some student events. And you'll find further resources within the resource library to dig down into consulting resumes, consulting cover letters, a link to our YouTube that can show you some live cases that we've recorded. And every event that comes in through our employer relations team, which Emma is a part of, will be within 1220. And so again, you can dig into what's happening this week, today. 1220 is hopefully something you check in with very regularly. The more things get going, it's a huge resource, and it's where we house everything. It's where you'll put all of your resumes, for example, and we'll pull them together for employers who want a resume book, an overlook of the student population we have this year. And hopefully they'll pull folks from that resume book to do interviews, for example.
Courtney, if I could just say one thing about
Yeah.
Courtney. Hi, everyone. Very excited to have you all on here and get ready for you this fall. Just one thing, if you have not yet logged on to 1220, please do. I know there have been some emails that have come out over the last week, just making sure that you are getting the correct link and that you are able to log in. We want to make sure that you have access to that with no problem. So please just make sure you log in. That's something we're paying attention to. We want to make sure everyone is tapped into the resources that are available to them. And let us know if you do have any issues logging in. We are happy to help get you squared away.
Emma has already run interference for quite a few of y'all. So yes, if you have issues, reach out, because she will be able to help you.
Yes.
And this is just, again, what the resource library would look like, what you can do within 1220. I think the big thing I want to throw at y'all is try and do your resume as soon as possible. Have that ready, have that off of your plate come August 20 when you all start, or August 11. And then further, you can go in there and look at career exploration opportunities, start building your brand, looked at LinkedIn resources. LinkedIn should reflect your resume and can be another conduit into conversations with employers. So the more you can start looking at this stuff now, the better, because Mod 1 does come at you fast. So utilize that. And advice for career goals goes hand in hand with what I've just been saying. Attending sessions like this over the summer. We have also Management Consulted is doing some sessions. So the earlier you can start, the better. Do a resume review, work on your LinkedIn profile, and schedule appointments with the coaches as you see fit. I know I've met with quite a few of y'all to do resume reviews or just answer questions, and you're welcome to do that with me. We have Kathleen, Sandy, and Emily on the team. And you want to get preparing. So utilize the resources you have in 1220. The resource library has probably too much information, but I think more is better. So dig in there, see what's applicable to you. It can also help with career exploration. If you're thinking maybe consulting, maybe something else, take a look in there and you can get a better idea. It's also a great time to just sort of Google or look into what job postings look like. So if you want to get your head around what does a consultant look like, or what are they looking for, these job postings have things that repeat in all of them. So take a look on the internet and you can look at job postings and start understanding your transferable skills. So as I mentioned with Sam, he was coming from a non-traditional background, but he certainly had transferable skills into consulting. It was just a matter of learning your story and learning what consulting was to then find out what those transferable skills are. And the last thing is to be adaptable. This year, if nothing else, and COVID is an example of we never really know what's going to happen. So you want to plan for any and everything and be adaptable as needed. So have a goal in mind, but make sure you set multiple goals within that framework. You can do that by researching on your own, connecting with classmates, second years, CMC. We can talk through what the approaches can be and what the options can be, but think of options, think of multiple outcomes for yourself, because it's better to think about that now than be racing towards that later in the process. So I know I spoke a lot. I want to give you all, we have a few minutes, give you all the opportunity to ask questions to myself, CMC, and also Emmy is still here. So if you want to come off mute or ask in chat, please, the floor is yours.
I'll jump in and ask a question really quickly.
Yeah.
I have had quite a few emails just because of the Forte event coming up this week. And one of which was from Deloitte. It was a Blitz interview invitation, and I'm sure a lot of us got that one. So what are your opinions on, like, it's at the end of this month, and I'm like, I don't know how to case anything yet. So what are your opinions on getting into like Blitz interviews when we might not be prepared for like everything that might be coming up?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I have a love-hate relationship, but I am excited that Deloitte is excited about Owen. So it is early, but I do think their expectations will be tempered a bit because they do know y'all haven't even started. But we do have resources you can utilize, and I am happy to connect you with folks I think would be helpful. Specifically, someone named Kat Durham just graduated with Emmy, and she did this early process. So she's going to be able to tell you what the heck it looked like, perhaps run some cases with you, along with some other Deloitte folks who weren't in that specific process, but could still help you. And I think running through the case examples that we have on our YouTube channel could be really helpful. And I'm sure Emmy would also make time to chat with you. So it would be a light prep compared to being ready in January, but I think there are things you could do to get ready for June 30. But I say this all knowing it is overwhelming and it is early. It is an opportunity though, if nothing else, you get practice. In my experience, you go through this early process with Deloitte. If it doesn't work out this time, they still want to speak with you throughout the fall and hopefully see you in January as well. So it could just be a good way to start networking.
Yeah. And I know the email said that you can ask in or like re-interview in the fall. So I don't know if it's worth going in at the end of the month, but I guess maybe.
Yeah. I mean, if you really are not comfortable doing it at the end of month, that can be, a decision. I think you could get yourself ready though to present in a presentable fashion. But Emmy, do you have different things you would suggest?
I think you have plenty of time to get to a place that matches their expectations. Like Courtney was saying, I feel like that my peers who had those interviews, I don't think they had to do nearly as extensive of case prep to be successful. So I think if you want to do it here in a few weeks, you will be fine and we can make sure you're ready for it. But if you are really busy or traveling and don't feel like you have any time to devote to it, then it might be a good idea to hold off.
Yeah. And I can help talk you through how that communication could go, or different game plans. It's an overwhelming proposition. So if we need to think it through, by all means, utilize us, any of us, we can talk you through it.
Awesome. Thank
I
you so much.
definitely err on the side of go for it. In case that wasn't clear.
I think that's the plan. That's the goal.
Hi, I have a quick question
Yeah.
about a cover letter. I'm working on it now. Sadness. It's miserable. And my question is for consulting. I was looking through the resources on 1220 and I see like kind of two formats where you have one that gives a story and then you have one where there are like 3 bullet points. Is there a format that is better for consulting, would you say?
So this is personal preference, but I think also history shows me that this is probably the right way to go. The bullets is a way for a recruiter to maybe see what you're trying to express without having to read every word, which they may not read every word. So in my mind, bullets is more effective, and also could help you organize as you're writing it, and also utilize the bullets again for another cover letter. If you build yourself 3 to 5 bullets, you can plug and play according to where you're applying. So I lean on the bullet format.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? I know there's chats. Thank you for someone talking to them. I can't do that this many things at once. So what I'm going to do is we've recorded the sessions. You all can watch this again if you have questions, but I will also say that Emmy and Sam and Jeff and Stephen, who couldn't join us live, are examples of folks who will gladly answer questions for you along with the CMC. If you ever have questions about who to reach out to or how, chat, send me an email, whatever, I can get you connected. I just want you to know you all have resources and we're available to you all this summer and into the fall, of course. So thank you everyone for joining, panelists especially, Emmy, especially on your birthday. Thank you, thank you. And we'll hopefully see you all soon in person.